A back and forth game ends in a thrilling walk-off, and just like last year, Francisco Lindor plays hero.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Friday nights at Citi Field are back, and aren't they an absolute joy? What a game we got to watch. A back and forth affair. Cardinals go up early. Mets tie it. Cardinals take the lead back. Mets tie it. Mets take a lead. Cardinals tie it. Then eventually it all culminates in that magical moment. Francisco Lindor stepping into the box in a tie game, bottom of the ninth inning. And he does what your best player should do. Francisco Lindor hitting a monster home run and doing it in style, pimping it, and giving the Mets a magical victory. Kind of shocking that's the first walk-off home run he has hit in a Mets uniform. Certainly not his first walk-off, but the first walk-off homer, 250th homer of his career. I will put Lindor's greatness into context a little bit more in the next segment, but to take you back to the beginning of this game, before that magical moment, David Peterson was on the mound, and you can look at the final line and say, how well did he throw the ball? You know, he did make it through 6 innings. He gave up 3 runs on 7 hits. Now, was it a bad start for David Peterson? But if you watched it, no, it was a really good start. He struck out 9, and yes, he gave up some runs, but he didn't get hit particularly hard. Second inning, he gives up a run on 3 singles. The first one, a line drive off the bat of Brendan Donovan. Donovan, his swing of the bat is good as I think pretty much any opposing hitter we've seen so far this season. His at-bats have just been so tough. He is clearly locked in. And I'm looking forward to him leaving town because he just looks really good right now. And that hit, I mean, nothing could do about that. Then a couple ground balls that found some holes on the right side of the infield. So no shame in that, especially because Peterson was able to strand 2 in that inning, bounces right back, strikes out the side in the 3rd inning. 4th inning, gives up a leadoff single, then ground ball. Pete Alonso makes a really good play on it, doesn't hesitate, gets the force out at second base, but that benefit really goes away as David Peterson threw a wild pitch that allowed the runner to advance, and then he gave up a base hit to score a run. But again, it wasn't some well-struck ball. It was a ground ball that Pete Alonso, laid out for. It, deflected off his glove. It was still, a well-hit ball, I guess I should say. But it's not like he gave up a double in the gap, just some base hits that cost him another run there. Settled in the 5th inning, 1-2-3 frame, including 2 more strikeouts and also a leaping catch by Pete Alonso. He's playing really good defense, just great all-around baseball. Watching Pete play right now is an absolute joy. Also, watching him leg out a triple in the 1st inning was a lot of fun too, although he did not score because it was a 2-out triple. And who came up? No, was it a line out right after that? But Alonso unable to come across that inning. Bottom of the 5th, though. Mets get right back in the game. This is where the lineup really started going, and it was the bottom of the lineup, and it was Brett Baty, leadoff double. I'm going to talk about him more in the final segment because it really is starting to be apparent that both Baty and Vientos are swinging much better bats, and that really does help this lineup a ton. Tyrone Taylor rips a triple that scores Baty. After Lindor gets out, Juan Soto comes up and comes through. Soto was getting ovations all night from Mets fans, from a packed crowd. The atmosphere at Citi Field is amazing right now, and it was great to see Soto, pay off those fans and come through in that moment to tie up the game. Peterson had a rough 6th inning. He was pushed further than he has been all year, and Wilson Contreras and Nolan Arenado got him. Contreras, the only extra base hit of the game, it hits a double to lead off that inning. Nolan Arenado didn't hit the ball particularly hard, but got some air under it and got it out in front of Brandon Nimmo for a base hit, and that scored Contreras. Peterson had to face Donovan left on left, try to steal one more out, and he did get Donovan out, so that was a good at-bat there. And ultimately, again, 5 1/3, 3 earned runs, allowed 7 hits, but no walks, 9 strikeouts. I thought it was a fine start for David Peterson. Wasn't his best, but I don't think that it was necessarily a bad one by any stretch of the imagination. Hands the ball to the bullpen, and it was Max Kranick who comes on, and again, Kranick delivers, gets a pop-up, strikeout to get out of that jam, and then he would work a 1-2-3 seventh inning. Before that, though, Mark Vientos tied up the game, leadoff homer in the bottom of the sixth. And he had a pitch that was at his eyes. I mean, you should not hit that ball out. Great at bat, too. Fouled off 4 pitches, 3 of them with 2 strikes. And all of them were sweepers and sliders. And he's just hanging in there on the breaking balls. Gets a fastball up in the zone that he's supposed to swing through. And he, swings through the baseball and knocks it out of the park. Awesome to see Vientos start to turn a corner, and big moment to tie the game. As I mentioned, Kranick scoreless 7th. Ryan Stanek 1-2-3 8th. Bottom of the 8th inning, Vientos gets another turn. Leadoff single. Luisangel Acuna comes on to run. Steals second base. I think you're seeing the value that Acuna brings even when he comes off the bench. To have that guy pinch run. We'll talk in coming up episodes here as Jeff McNeil's return gets closer about the decision the Mets have to make. I still can't see a world, no matter how well Brett Baty's hitting, where the Mets really would send Acuna down. I could be wrong about that. Maybe they really do want him to play every day in Syracuse, and maybe they feel like Jose Azocar can be that pinch runner for them. But I just think Acuna's too good to be in the minor leagues right now. He's doing too much for the Mets. With that said, that stolen base was great, but here's the issue. Brandon Nimmo hits a ground ball to Nolan Arenado. And I don't know what Acuna was trying to do. He did beat Nolan Arenado to the bag, but he didn't wait for Arenado to make the play to first. And he ends up taking off. Arenado dives to get to him. And here's a little issue that Acuna has, and I don't know how you fix it. Every single time he dives past the base. Every single time. And in this instance, he dives past third and he gets out. And in today's game, really, actually, I was going to say today's game with the replay review, but it's even beyond that. I mean, he's just diving past the base every single time. Someone's got to work on that. He's got to find a way that and I know it's tough with the oven mitts, but maybe start your dive sooner. And I guess maybe that would slow you down. At the same time, it's great that you beat the throw and you get to the base quick, but he really has to perfect these sliding past the base and grabbing it with his foot. Otherwise, he can be out. And that was an instance where it did come back to bite him, gets tagged out. Luckily for the Mets, Brandon Nimmo, who was not able to advance on that play, he just was standing on first base on the ground ball. They try to pick him off, errant pickoff throw. He ends up on second base, and then he scores on a double. So it didn't necessarily come back to haunt the Mets, because had Acuna just stayed on second base, Nimmo would have been thrown out, and it would have been Acuna that scored. But it's just something that I'm noticing that I wanted to point out, that they got to sort of figure something out with these dives. He's got to stay on the bag some way, somehow. Regardless, the Mets take that lead in the bottom of the 8th inning, 4-3. Edwin Diaz, having worked back-to-back, he wasn't good to go. So it's Huascar Brazaban that comes on for the save opportunity. And who leads off the inning? None other than Brendan Donovan. What does he do? Hits the foul pole down the right field line and ties the game. But Brazaban being able to give up that home run, lock back in, and strike out the next 3 batters is one of the more underappreciated aspects of this game. He set up the home run by Lindor by locking in like that. And the pitching the Mets continue to get overall, but particularly as some of these guys in the bullpen, has been so massive. And it's such a stark contrast from what we saw last year, particularly at the beginning of the season. So all that sets the stage for the home run. I opened the show talking about Francisco Lindor in a 1-1 count, gets a cutter inside. He was either looking for it or just saw it well and covered it. And it was the perfect swing. If you're playing MLB The Show, it's the perfect, which for those of you who aren't aware of the video game, perfect is where you time the ball up perfectly and you square it up perfectly on your barrel, and the ball goes a long way. And that's what we saw from Lindor. 108.8 miles per hour off the bat, 401 feet, upper tank, right field. And he's so cool too. I mean, I don't know if anyone matches Lindor's swag at times. Drops the bat, not a big bat flip, not showing up to the team, drops the bat, looks into the dugout, and celebrates that moment with his teammates. It was truly a special moment for the Mets early this season, and they keep the winning ways going. They're now right, one win away from taking a 4-game set, and they clearly have great momentum going at Citi Field. What is that now? 7-1 through their first 8 games played at Citi, making it a tough ballpark to play in, and that is a really good sign with the Phillies coming to town on Monday. But I want to talk about Francisco Lindor a little bit more in the next segment. His greatness, what he's done, 250 home runs on his career. This is one of the best shortstops in MLB history. I want to tell you more about that in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you feel fuller, longer. Personally, I love the no-shell varieties of Wonderful Pistachios. You have the honey roasted here. I also love the smoky barbecue, the perfect grab-and-go snack, whether you're on the road, whether you're just looking to munch at your desk, or maybe you're on the golf course, want to throw in your bag like I do for the perfect snack when you're on the links. You should definitely check out Wonderful Pistachios. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 13,000 subscribers. We're about 50 away, so we're right there. I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. Going into this season, there were a lot of storylines surrounding the Mets. Juan Soto was the biggest one, right? First year in blue and orange, $765 million deal. What would it look like? Pete Alonso returning to the Mets when that was at one point in doubt. All of these guys got a lot of buzz. But right now, to me, there's no question about it. This is still Francisco Lindor's team. Francisco Lindor is the engine that drives the New York Mets. Now, Juan Soto, turned that car into the sportiest of cars with a $765 million deal. He is, the best hitter on this team. And I still believe that despite how great Pete Alonso started the year and despite what Francisco Lindor did last season. But Lindor is the heartbeat. Lindor is the best player on this team. And this is still for the next 5 years, Francisco Lindor's team. Now it's both of their team, and it's Pete Alonso's team, and it's Nimmo's team. And I know that, that talk of whose team is it, sometimes it distracts from the fact that it's still a team sport and all these guys are pulling the rope together. But at the same time, there is something about a player that is at the center, at the core. And that's Francisco Lindor. Now, could Juan Soto have come through and hit a home run in that 9th inning as well? Absolutely. Guy's a great hitter. But that moment with Citi Field ready to erupt, Francisco Lindor is built for it. And it takes time because Juan Soto just moved in. And when you just move into a new place, it takes a little bit before it feels like home. Francisco Lindor can tell you that firsthand. He really struggled when he started with the Mets. And he's just a slow starter in general. But that first year, 2021, it was a rough one for Lindor. But year over year over year, he has gotten better and better and better. He's ingratiated himself to the fan base. And last year was obviously the year where I think he became beloved by Mets fans with the MVP caliber season that he had. To see him come through in that moment, to see him hit that home run, soaking with his teammates. I mean, this is a superstar who is in his 5th year with the franchise, who is at the core of everything they do. And I was on a podcast a couple weeks back, and I was talking about Locked On Mets and my story with the show and everything else, and answering a lot of different questions. And one of the questions I got was, "What's my Mets Mount Rushmore?" Not who are the best 4 players in Mets history. For my personal fandom, who are my 4? So I thought about it. And the first 2 are easy because it's my childhood. Mike Piazza and David Wright. The third one took another couple seconds, and that one was pretty easy too. Jacob deGrom. because I loved watching DeGrom pitch. And in my lifetime, from what I've seen with these two eyes, best pitcher I've ever seen. But then who was going to be the fourth one? And I thought a lot about it. Beltran, sure, did I like Reyes as a kid? Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Pete Alonso's been a lot of fun to watch, but and the more and more I thought about it, the more the picture, crystallized. And I'm like, yeah, my personal Mets fandom, Francisco Lindor is on that Mount Rushmore. And he is already the greatest shortstop in franchise history. And he could go down as the greatest player in franchise history. Who knows where his career goes? But this is why you sign superstars. This is why you sign, or in Lindor's case, trade and then extend superstars and acquire that top level talent. Because ultimately, that talent's going to shine through. And the same is true with Juan Soto. I'm not saying this to say, Juan Soto is never going to be able to take this team from Lindor or to be the star or the face of the Mets. Because Juan Soto can turn it on and win an MVP this season. But there's something about the guy that was there first and that built the Mets up to the point that a Juan Soto would come. And it's going to be really special to watch these guys play together. But when the Mets, a little bold to say when, but I'm going to say when the Mets win that World Series at some point, who are we going to be happiest for as Mets fans? It's going to be hard to top Francisco Lindor because of what he has done for this franchise. He came in year one of the Steve Cohen era. He didn't have to deal with the Will Pun stink, but he had to watch the Mets shake a lot of that off. And he's been through it, and now here he is delivering for a team that looks ready-made to win now and win big. So really exciting moment for him. And then to put his greatness into context a little bit more, that was his 250th home run of his career. That puts him in a very elite class because there's only been 6 shortstops in MLB history who have cleared 250 home runs. And while 500 is probably out of the question, 400 is not for Lindor. And no shortstop has ever done that. Now, A-Rod, if he didn't move to third base, would have done that because he had 345 as a shortstop before he got to third base. And while you have the steroid part of it, for my money, putting that aside or even baking it in, I mean, A-Rod was still probably the greatest shortstop in MLB history in my eyes. You can go back in time and talk about some other guys, of course, if you want to go to the WAR leaderboards. And I'm sure that there's many that will go into the past and pull other names out. When it comes to home runs, who has the most ever for a shortstop? Cal Ripken Jr. at 353. You have Ernie Banks, 298. Miguel Tejada, 285. Derek Jeter, 260. And Lindor at 250. So he's going to be one of those 3 that get to 300 for sure. And 150 away from 400, I think he can get there. If he averages 30 a season for the next 5 years, that's 400. So that's a really special thing. He's also already, one of the greatest switch hitters that we've ever seen. And when it comes to that, only 5 switch hitters ever gotten to 400. Mickey Mantle, Eddie Murray, Chipper Jones, Carlos Beltran, and Mark Teixeira. He could join that group. Francisco Lindor is in the middle of a Hall of Fame career. He really is. And what he has done throughout the last couple of years has been really special, last season in particular. And he looks just as good as he did at times last year. And you look at the overall numbers, you're saying, okay, well, it's only a 717 OPS. Stop praising him too much. Only a 263 average on the season. But remember, he started 0 for 11 in that series in Houston, which weighs all the numbers down because if you remove that and you just look at what he's done in April, it's sitting 308, 365 on base, 462 slug, 2 home runs, 4 doubles, 7 RBIs, 11 runs scored, 2 stolen bases. Started the month with an 8-game hitting streak, took an offer, and since he's reeled off 7 straight games with a hit. So 15 out of 16 games this month, he has gotten a hit. Went 3 for 4 on Thursday night, follows it up with a 1 for 5 performance, but that one was a giant one with the homer. You look at this lineup, and Lindor at the top of it sets the stage. Once you get Soto rolling, keep Pete Alonso hot. You got Mark Vientos starting to turn a corner. This team can be really dangerous, but it is all predicated and all begins and ends with Francisco Lindor. Next segment, I want to talk about Vientos, though, because Vientos is definitely starting to swing a hotter bat. And Brett Baty is following him as well. Are these two guys going to be big pieces for this lineup in the coming weeks and months? I'll go through that in just a minute. First, though, another quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. It's our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Mark Vientos is starting to swing it. 6-game hitting streak. He's now homered in back-to-back games. He also has not taken a strikeout in the last 2 games, which is a little bit of an oddity for him this season because he didn't strike out in the first 2 games of the season. Then he did not go back-to-back games without striking out all year. So he was striking out most games, and if he did have a occasional game where he actually did not strike out, the next game he certainly was going to. So that just shows you he's starting to see the ball a little bit better. He drove in a run in Houston the first series of the season and then went 12 games without an RBI. Now he has driven in a run in 4 of the last 5 games for the Mets. So you're starting to see that run producer coming back. And it's funny because before Thursday's game, Carlos Mendoza was asked about the fact that Mark Vientos hadn't hit a home run. And one of the things he said was, once he gets one, they'll come in bunches. And sure enough, gets one on Thursday, Friday, hits another one. Great to see him start to swing it because we know what this guy can do. We saw it last year. He's an impact bat for the Mets. And there's a world where when you start to rank the Mets hitters, he could be better than a Brandon Nimmo this year. There's no doubt about it. And so right now, you're starting to see what this top of the lineup can look like. You got Lindor, who's been swinging a great bat in April. You got Alonso, who's been swinging a great bat all year. You have Juan Soto, who still getting his walks. He's going to come around. I'm sure that breakout's coming soon. And now Mark Vientos is starting to pick it up. That's 4. If Nimmo starts to swing it, all right. If a Winker steps up, maybe when you get Alvarez or McNeil back, those guys can really help. But you also have the role players, and one that's starting to turn a little bit of a corner as well is Brett Baty. You know, you look at Mark Vientos, he has a 580 OPS and he's hit 2 home runs. Home runs are obviously going to juice your OPS because the slug is there, right? Would you be surprised to find out that Brett Baty's OPS without a homer is only 20 points off Mark Vientos? But all of a sudden, he's getting extra base hits. He's hit safely in 5 straight games, and he's got an extra base hits in 3 of them. And in this game, first at bat, we saw him draw a walk, which I think that was his first walk of the year. Then he steals second base, got a great jump, almost a running lead and stole that base with ease. He doesn't score, but still, it was a good first turn for him. Second at bat, gets a slider in a 1-2 count that he could hit, and he rips it down the right field line for a double. So that was impressive. Third at bat, grounds out. Fourth at bat, he struck out, but that strikeout was not where there's a pitch right over the heart of the plate and he's looking at it, or he's swinging through a pitch nowhere close to it. No, it was an inside pitch that missed the zone by, a full baseball. I mean, it did not cross the plate. Just a bad call. And I think you're seeing the at-bats looking markedly better. When Aram Layton was on the show last week or 10 days ago, whatever it was, me and him were talking about Brett Baty, and he made the comment that it looks like they moved the mound 10 feet up when Baty steps into the box. He's just laid on everything, and it's like sometimes it's like he's starting his at-bats and the count's 0-2, and that was really true because Brett Baty really looked lost for a while. But I do want to bring you back to the first couple series of the season, because in those first 2 series, he only struck out 4 times. Now, still 4 strikeouts, but the next couple, I think it was like 10 or 11 strikeouts. And the at-bats were different, because the first couple series, I felt like Brett Baty wasn't getting results, but his at-bats weren't terrible. He was still getting himself into hitters' counts, and he wasn't coming through, but it still felt like he was seeing the baseball well enough. But then you have some bad results, and all of the past struggles come hurling back at you, and mentally he was shot, and he was really struggling. Now that he's gotten off the schneid and he started to have a couple good games, it seems like he's getting back to the Brett Baty that we've seen in the minor leagues, that we've seen in spring training, that we saw at points last season. Remember, Brett Baty was rocking a batting average over 300 before he got hurt and didn't go on the IL, and then he came back. And I don't know how that really impacted him. I wouldn't blame the injury for his struggles last year, but it's just to say, around this time last season, Brett Baty was hitting 300. So it's not like he's never seen any success at the big league level. He has never been able to sustain it. Now, is he going to be able to sustain this, or is this just another flash in the pan? We're going to find out. And I can't say I'm bought all the way back in, but once he does lock in, he reminds you, oh, there is a good hitter in there. And remember, if you're looking at minor league numbers, Brett Baty, markedly better minor league numbers than a Luis Angel Acuna. Brett Baty's minor league numbers are right there with Alvarez and Vientos, and markedly better than Ronnie Mauricio. So he has been a good hitter at high levels of competition before. He just hasn't been able to do it at the big league level. And maybe this is him starting to figure it out. And if he does, that puts the Mets in a tough position when Jeff McNeil comes back. And that's something we're probably going to spend an entire show on. Just how do they put these pieces together? But if it was me and it was my decision, I just can't justify rostering Jose Azocar over Baty and Acuna right now. Now, how you work all those guys into the mix, it's going to be tough. And I think center field is a big part of it, where you get Acuna live his time in center, and Baty gets his time at second base and third. And then I think you could stomach and you could find a couple starts a week for Brett Baty, one at third, one at second base once the season's rolling. Now, that's not playing consistently, and he might struggle in that role, but I'd just be curious to get a look at it, because there's nothing for Brett Baty to gain in the minor leagues. Acuna, there's some to gain, but I just think he's too important and valuable to the roster right now with Jose Siri, with his ability to steal bases, and also just giving you a right-handed bat, giving you a right-handed complement to a Jeff McNeil. Baty, in that respect, gives you a left-handed complement to Mark Vientos. And that's not to say that Baty should start over Vientos a ton, but, these guys, when it comes to the Mets front office, the analytics department, they have all that data information that we couldn't even begin to comprehend. They know when Mark Vientos is going into a start and it's a bad matchup for him. And while you want to see Vientos get to the point where he is an everyday guy, I also think that there is something to be said about shielding him from a bad matchup here and there. And overall, that will still keep his confidence high. And it might actually help the production, because you're not going to have, especially if you just look at the stats, maybe an 0 for 4 in there with 3 strikeouts, because, oh yeah, the Mets knew that was a horrible matchup, but who else were they going to put at third base? If Baty is swinging a decent bat and it might be a better matchup for him, you can't put Baty out there, and Baty does give you the good defense. So I think it's good to see these guys starting to play well. And the upside in this team, or I would say all the upside, but part of the upside in this team is getting your established guys going with the young talent at the same time coalescing, like we saw last year, where Vientos was really the one young piece. But, with a bunch of veterans around him, it all worked out beautifully. I don't think that Baty or Acuna is going to have the impact that Vientos did last year, but can all these guys come together and help the Mets be just that much of a better team? I really think they can. So good to see those two in particular start to swing it better. Really the three, if you throw Acuna into that mix. And it will be a very tough decision to decide if the Mets want to send down Baty, Acuna, or Azocar when McNeil's ready. It's also going to be tough to find everyone playing time once you get to that point. But those are good problems to have for sure. Now, before we close the show, some minor league updates. Francisco Alvarez played the entire game in Binghamton on Friday night. He'll do that again on Saturday. And once he checks that box, he will be ready to return to the Mets. I'd imagine that they will not do that on Sunday, but do I think they might throw him back in there in that series against the Phillies and just see what Alvarez does with some adrenaline, getting a start on Monday night? I think that that's a real possibility. So good to see him getting close. He didn't have a good game offensively, 0 for 5 with a strikeout, but still, he's definitely drawing closer. Jet Williams, I just want to touch on him. He is still striking out, kind of an alarming rate for him. Not really walking as much as you'd expect, but he's hit a couple home runs, and he has that OPS up to 831. And in that lineup in Binghamton, that's a really good OPS because you got Nick Morabito and Ryan Clifford, the other top prospects at that level that we have our eyes on, who are not doing well. Morabito, 495 OPS, Ryan Clifford, 598. So Jet at 831, pretty solid start to his season, and there's a lot more that he can tap into. The stolen bases haven't quite come yet. He has 2 on 3 attempts. He has the all-around game that should start to shine through, and you never know. That might lead to a promotion to Syracuse, and depending on how the Mets season goes, I would not rule out halfway through the year and in the end of the season, there is still a world where Jet Williams could make a big league impact this year. Another guy that's probably closer to making a big league impact because of what the Mets roster might need is Drew Gilbert. If center field's not working out, if Taylor's not hitting, if Acuna goes on a slide, whatever it is, if Azakar isn't playing well, if he's the guy that stays on the roster, whatever is going on at the big league level, if the Mets eventually need center field to help, Drew Gilbert is waiting in the wings in AAA, and he's finally up there. After starting the season rehabbing with St. Lucie, he has now gotten up to AAA. He started there on Thursday. He's played 2 games so far, 1 for 7. Not going to read into the numbers too much, but just great to see that he's back out there playing in AAA. Finally gives us some prospect to sink our teeth into in that Syracuse lineup, and I'll be curious to continue to monitor him moving forward. And obviously, I will let you guys know and give you updates in the coming days and weeks ahead. Brandon Sproat had a really nice start today. It was a 7-inning game because they were playing a doubleheader, and he went 6 shutout innings, allowed 4 hits, 1 walk, 1 strikeout. So not a lot of strikeouts, but pitching to contact in a way like we saw him do in spring training. Really nice to see him start to shrug off those early struggles and have a couple of good starts put together here. Brandon Sproat, we'll see how it continues to progress, but this is another guy that you never know if he can make a big league impact this year. Good to see him finally throwing the ball a little bit better. Mets play against the Cardinals. This was an afternoon. Yeah, late afternoon, 4:05 start. Kodai Senga going up against Matthew Liberatore. Big edge for the Mets when it comes to this pitching matchup. Liberatore, I mean, not a horrible left-hander, but a guy that has a fastball you can hit. I remember he threw a spring training game I was at a couple of years ago. That was just brutal. I mean, he was throwing batting practice. He's obviously gotten better from there. Last year, pitching a lot out of the bullpen. He had a 4.40 ERA. This year's made 3 starts, has a 3.93 ERA, has 18 strikeouts and 18 1/3 innings pitched. Only 1 walk, so he's going to pound the strike zone. I'll see if the Mets can do damage against him. He is a left-hander, so I'd imagine you're going to see Acuna and Marte in the lineup. I'd be very surprised if those guys aren't in there, as the Mets will roll out their right-handers against lefty. And Kodai Senga is coming off a great start, so this is a game where the Mets can hopefully win the series early and potentially put themselves in line to maybe even get a sweep on Sunday. But good opportunity for the Mets to keep the good vibes rolling at Citi Field. And tomorrow I will have another show for you breaking down everything we see in that game, maybe previewing what's going to lie ahead on Sunday. And if that isn't enough, we'll see if there's any other minor league stories to keep you tapped in on. Jeff McNeil will be playing Binghamton alongside Francisco Alvarez. So it'll be good to see what those two guys do as they both inch closer and closer to their big league return. That's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day, not for your second watch. Check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. There are local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Locked On Sports Today will keep you up to date on all the latest in the world of sports by Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube.